Perhaps. On a Bahamas sailboat in 1969, Peggy Lipton met Quincy Jones. Well, Hollywood's most contentious love story began with what appeared to be a harmless rendezvous. He had a spouse. She was becoming well known. However, neither was able to stop what transpired. They concealed their relationship from the public for 5 years. Everyone was amazed when they eventually got married in 1974. However, their interracial relationship was not the actual scandal. Quincy had been keeping it a secret for 15 years. On August 30th, 1946, Peggy Lipton was born in New York City. Her family appeared to be ideal on the surface. They were well-educated, socially regarded, and rich. Her father was a corporate lawyer with Harvard training. Her family had previously played a significant role in Dublin's Jewish community, and her mother was an artist. They resided in one of the most upscale communities, Lawrence in Nassau County. However, there was a much darker reality hidden behind that well-preserved exterior than anyone outside the family could have imagined. Peggy was raised in an environment of generational trauma and unsaid suffering. A portion of it originated from her mother's side, whose family members were Jewish refugees who had left Latvia. Her mother had an intense need for appearances and control. Peggy Ann was her given name at birth. However, Rita made the decision to alter it to Margaret Ann. Although it appeared to be a minor issue, it revealed a more significant reality about their home. In their social circle, appearance was more important than sincerity. Even if it meant concealing what was actually going on, they wanted to appear respectable. Peggy began to stammer so badly at the age of 7 that she occasionally lost the ability to pronounce her own name. She was once a vibrant child, but it made her shy and reserved. Speaking in front of the class could result in disgrace. Therefore, school became a place of fear. Adults never connected it to the trauma she had experienced, dismissing it as a phase. Actually, it was a physical manifestation of the emotional harm she was experiencing. Later, Peggy would claim that she became depressed and melancholy, occasionally holding her breath to experience what it might be like to die. She would eventually be able to escape through acting, but for now, she was confined to her own silence. When she was 15, her father assisted her in signing with the renowned modeling agency owned by Eileen Ford, and that's when her life started to change. For a teenager who could hardly pronounce her own name without stuttering, it was an incredible break. She had big brown eyes, ash blonde hair, and a tall, slender frame. Before long, her image started showing up in national fashion magazines. She appeared to be living a gorgeous dream. She continued to struggle with the same depressing ideas on the inside, turning to cocaine, marijuana, and diet pills as coping mechanisms. The irony was incisive. She might serve as a model for the world to see, but because of her speech issues, she frequently stayed up at night thinking about saying certain things on stage. The family relocated to Los Angeles in 1964 when she was 18. The change was abrupt and profound. Peggy left home and relocated to Topanga Canyon in a matter of months. She became deeply involved in the music scene, yoga, meditation, vegetarianism, and the counterculture. With others who looked and lived like her, she characterized the 1967 Monterey Pop Festival as a spiritual awakening. She also dabbled with peyote around this time, working with British actor Terence Stamp. It was liberty. However, it was risky for someone who still had severe injuries. She agreed to a deal with Universal Pictures that same year. Despite the terrible twist, it was a significant professional milestone. Speaking was necessary for acting, and her stutter frequently caused her to freeze or seem as though she had forgotten her lines. However, she was able to talk clearly while reading from a script. She was cast in whatever parts the studio deemed appropriate, and she was forced to embrace them. At the age of 19, she made her television debut on The John Forsythe Show in 1965. Although it was a humble beginning, it was the start of Peggy's transition from fashion model to actress. She made appearances in Mr. Novak, The FBI, The Alfred Hitchcock Hour, The Road West, The Virginian, The Invaders, and Bewitched throughout the ensuing years. These jobs weren't just any old jobs. Each one put her in front of viewers who were both receptive to new faces and devoted to their favorite series. She experienced psychological suspense, a genre that would eventually influence her work in Twin Peaks when she appeared on The Alfred Hitchcock Hour. In a rare family moment during her early career, she even appeared on TV alongside her brother Robert Lipton in a Mr. Novak episode in 1965. Peggy made her cinematic debut in The Western Blue in 1968. It was another family relationship. Another member of the cast was her brother Robert, who played Antonio, who was killed in a spectacular gunfight. Peggy got to collaborate with well-known actors Terrence Stamp, Joanna Patet, and Carl Malden on the movie. This was a slower-paced, larger-scale universe that was distinct from television. She gained experience and comfort from working on Blue alongside her brother during a year when her career was undergoing significant change. The Mod Squad brought about that transformation. In 1968, ABC brought something new to television with the casting of Peggy Lipton as Julie Barnes. Her character had a rough past, was arrested for vagrancy, and was a runaway from a prostitute mother's house. It felt like a real role, since Peggy was aware of brokenness herself. She once said that when she read lines from a screenplay, she didn't stutter. She gained freedom from playing a different person that she never had in real life. From 1969 to 1972, she received 4 consecutive Emmy nods for her delicate, vulnerable performance, in addition to 4 Golden Globe nominations. She was one of the youngest people to win the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a television series drama in 1971 when she was only 24 years old. Her victory was more than just a personal triumph because it occurred during the height of the Civil Rights Movement and the Vietnam War. Television was ready to embrace counterculture themes as seen by Peggy's Prize, and Julie Barnes served as a link between the establishment and dissident youth. A revolution in style was also brought about by her rapid success. Peggy became a national celebrity thanks to her long, straight, ash blonde hair, bell-bottoms, miniskirts, and love beads. Ironically, she acknowledged that being famous made her paranoid and had no interest in the limelight. Nevertheless, by 1970, department stores were carrying clothing lines with Mod Squad influences, and fashion publications were promoting the Julie Barnes image. Women all throughout the nation were requesting the Peggy Lipton cut at hair salons. Her aesthetic made hippie culture more approachable and less intimidating for suburban America. Her 1966 Deb Star of the Year award from the Hollywood Makeup and Hairstylists Guild foreshadowed her future impact, even before the program started. Television regulations were broken by the Mod Squad itself. It launched the controversial concept of deploying young hippie characters as undercover police officers when it debuted on September 24, 1968. Instead of using conventional police techniques, they relied on street smarts and did not carry firearms. The program addressed topics like abortion, racism, PTSD in Vietnam veterans, domestic abuse, and police brutality that no other network drama at the time dared to address. One of the first interracial-led casts on primetime television was also on it. It was so well regarded by 1970 that one of its episodes received an Edgar Award nomination for Best Mystery Teleplay. Peggy attempted to pursue a career in music at the height of her popularity on television. Her self-titled album was published by Lou Adler's Ode Records in 1968. Songs by well-known singer-songwriters of the time were covered, like Stony End, a song by Laura Nyro that was recorded 2 years prior to the well-known rendition by Barbra Streisand. On the Billboard Bubbling Under list, her rendition peaked at number 121. Other songs, such as Lou, which peaked at number 45 in Canada in February 1970, also saw some chart success. She was one of the first TV stars to enter the recording business, even if her music career never quite matched her TV success, but her life was considerably darker behind the camera. She acknowledged that she could hardly appreciate her accomplishment in her 2005 memoir. She feared dealing with the media, had severe social anxiety, and seldom ever left her home. Childhood trauma was the main cause of her timidity. Among other things, a severe stammer that once made it hard for her to pronounce her own name. Her fears were exacerbated rather than alleviated by fame. Her love life was as tumultuous. She started an affair with Paul McCartney during Beatlemania when she was 18. She briefly dated Elvis Presley in 1968, although she later stated that he was largely impotent at the time. She had previously narrowly avoided having sex with an insistent Sammy Davis Jr. and had other well-known romances with Terrence Stamp, Keith Moon, and Lou Adler. There were even accusations that she tried to get Elvis interested in Scientology, which led to the end of their romance. Even though millions of people loved her, she said she felt incredibly alone. Prior to her encounter with Quincy Jones in 1973, she claimed to have led a solitary existence. She acknowledged that her romantic relationships were more fantasy than reality and frequently dated emotionally unavailable guys. She used to fantasize about dying and try to feel what her final breath may be like when she was younger, which was a reflection of the macabre ideas she concealed beneath her calm, self-assured public persona. The industry began taking advantage of her at a young age. She was thrust into a world that sexualized her as soon as she was signed by the Eileen Ford modeling agency at the age of 15. By the age of 17, she had mastered the art of using her appearance as a cover for her low self-esteem. To deal with her sadness, she started taking diet pills, cocaine, and marijuana. She was worn out from the demanding Mod Squad filming schedule. She was also burned out and even more reclusive at the end of the 5-year run. When fate landed Peggy Lipton on a catamaran in the Bahamas with Quincy Jones in 1969, she was barely 22 years old and at the height of her stardom from the Mod Squad. A mutual acquaintance organized the trip, and their initial encounter was set up by the boat's soft swing. Jones was a married guy and, more significantly, a world-renowned music producer. Lipton subsequently claimed that she was drawn to him right away and that she couldn't quite put her finger on it. However, she was aware that there was no use in allowing her dreams run wild. Ulla Anderson, a Swedish model, was his wife and she controlled her emotions. The moment remained with her even as the glorious afternoon passed. They had no idea that it would be the beginning of a romantic tale. That would be the focus of Hollywood for many years. In 1974, 5 years later, Lipton overheard rumors circulating in Hollywood that Jones had split up. She had dated well-known people like Ryan O'Neal and Elvis Presley in the intervening years, but the memory of that day in the Bahamas had never truly diminished. Curious to find out if the time was finally right, she contacted Jones through his daughter, Jolie. Lipton laughed when Jolie came back with an answer. She was among the top 10. Jones went on to say, "But you had a bullet, baby," indicating that she was rapidly rising to the top. Immediately, the spark flared up again. After re-establishing contact, Lipton moved into his Los Angeles house in 2 weeks. Knowing that Jones didn't trust a woman who couldn't manage herself in the kitchen, she even learned how to cook before moving in. In order to score movies close to her, he installed a Moviola editing equipment in their bedroom, bringing his work into their personal lives as well. Their lives took an abrupt and terrifying change that same year. Jones almost died as a result of 2 consecutive brain aneurysms that occurred when he was 41. He was at home with Lipton when the first one suddenly hit. According to him, it felt like a shotgun explosion had blown off the back of my head. After 7.5 hours of surgery to fix the damage, doctors discovered another aneurysm on the verge of rupturing. Without delay, they carried out a second operation, extracting a portion of his skull and reattaching it using 6 metal clips. Friends started planning a memorial ceremony at the Los Angeles shrine because of how bad his condition was. He then remarked that it seemed as if he had been present at his own funeral while still alive. Although the surgery saved his life, the pressure of playing the trumpet may be fatal, so his career was permanently stopped. He and Lipton made the decision to get married in the midst of this precarious recuperation, cementing a relationship that was influenced as much by love as by survival. When they got married in 1974, racism, which is still pervasive in society, came into direct confrontation with them. According to Lipton's autobiography, Breathing Out, discrimination started to permeate their everyday existence. They were frequently stopped by police because they thought Lipton, a white blonde woman, was a prostitute who was being coerced into Jones's vehicle. They became accustomed to it because it occurred so frequently. When it came from her own family, the discrimination was much more pronounced. Her mother publicly stated that she couldn't see her daughter having mixed-race children or dating a black man. Eventually, Lipton informed her mother that she would either have to accept the connection or risk losing her completely. Although the open opposition was halted by that ultimatum, the harm persisted. Quincy Jones and Peggy Lipton welcomed their first daughter, Kidada, in March 1974. Rashida was born in February 1976, 2 years later. Their marriage was already controversial, and the social difficulties they experienced were exacerbated by the arrival of two mixed daughters. Children of mixed races at the period frequently faced discrimination and exclusion. Lipton's mother had previously informed her that she had envisioned a magnificent Jewish monarch or a charming white prince for her daughter, rather than a black man with mixed-race children. It was only after meeting her grandkids that she started to soften. Later, when she felt more at home at a predominantly black public high school, Kidada left her primarily white private school. In contrast, Rashida first encountered racial conflict during the height of identity politics at Harvard University. Both girls went on to have prosperous professions. Rashida, for example, starred in movies like The Social Network and in Parks and Recreation. Kidada, meantime, had a well-known friendship with rapper Tupac Shakur and made appearances in music videos. Their early life experiences influenced their dedication to diversity advocacy and multicultural causes. Lipton was only 27 years old in 1973 when the Mod Squad came to an end. She had 4 Emmy nominations, a Golden Globe, and the potential to land decades of top parts during the height of her career. To raise her daughters, she decided to give up performing entirely. She claimed that after 5 years of nonstop labor, she was burned out and had become insecure and reclusive due to the attention. The lone exception to her 15-year hiatus from Hollywood was her appearance in the television film The Return of the Mod Squad in 1979. Rita was 3 and Kidada was 5 at that point, and Lipton's primary goal was to be there for them. She later acknowledged that she didn't even know how to call people to reapply for a job when Twin Peaks came out in 1990. Later on, Rashida would characterize her as the most devoted individual and a consistent source of encouragement during auditions. When the Mod Squad made a brief comeback to television in 1979, it was more than just a reunion. During her lengthy break, it was her sole professional endeavor. 5 years after the conclusion of the series, the film brought back Michael Cole Lipton and Clarence Williams III, offering fans a nostalgic glimpse of their favorite characters. Quincy Jones, who produced Michael Jackson's Off the Wall in 1979 and Thriller in 1982, was also at the pinnacle of his musical career at the time. Although Lipton probably lost millions of dollars in revenue as a result of declining other offers throughout those years, it was evident what her priorities were. When Peggy Lipton and Quincy Jones got married on September 14, 1974, they appeared to be the ideal Holly, 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 the ideal Hollywood, 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 the ideal Hollywood pair, the ideal Hollywood pair, the ideal Hollywood pair. Their relationship appeared solid on the surface for many years, but by the middle of the 1980s, it was subtly failing. Later, Quincy claimed that he was simultaneously coping with 7 of the 10 most stressful situations in his life. He was exhausted from his career in the music business, and his mother's illness increased the strain at home. Peggy was also carrying the burden. She had quit acting at the height of her Mod Squad stardom to devote herself to their family folk. Their once happy Bel Air home started to feel stressful with conflicts and emotional distancing. They had been married for 12 years until they divorced in 1986. Kidada and Rashida, their daughters, were just 10 and 12 years old at the time. They had always appeared to be genuinely in love, thus the revelation was shocking to the public. Actually, they had been drifting apart for years already. Peggy reared the girls throughout their 3-year absence, while Quincy kept up his rigorous work schedule. Citing irreconcilable differences, Peggy filed for divorce in Los Angeles on October 10, 1989. Their romance, which began in 1969 when they met on a friend's boat in the Bahamas, came to an official end when she requested joint custody and support. One of the most well-known interracial marriages in Hollywood came to an end when the divorce was completed in 1990. Years of stress, professional demands, and unsaid betrayals were hidden behind the legalese. During their marriage, Quincy, who was 84 at the time, disclosed in an interview from 2018 that he had 22 girlfriends worldwide. He asserted that the women were all aware of one another and listed cities ranging from Shanghai to Cape Town. He even said that because some of the women he dated were younger than his daughters, they had to establish an age restriction for them. It was evident from her revelation that Peggy had suffered much more than the general public ever realized. Their children were also profoundly affected by the divorce. Following the breakup in 1990, 14-year-old Rashida remained with Peggy, while Hidayah, who was 16 at the time, decided to live with Quincy. Because of the arrangement, the sisters were raised apart and were influenced by quite distinct upbringings. Later, Rashida admitted the separation was difficult, but that things were made easier by her parents' ongoing connection. Nevertheless, the division of their house had a long-lasting effect on both daughters, and birthdays, holidays, and family gatherings became challenging. On March 28, 1988, Peggy Lipton made her broadcast comeback after a 15-year hiatus. In order to concentrate on her family with Quincy Jones, she had quit acting in 1973. However, by this point, they had split up in 1986 and were getting divorced in 1990. She made a reappearance as an associate district attorney in the ABC TV film Addicted to His Love. Barry Bostwick portrayed a charming con artist who pretended to be someone else in order to defraud middle-aged ladies via dating services. The narrative followed four ladies who deduced his plan and conspired to use a different lady as bait in order to capture him. It was uncommon in Hollywood at the time for an actress to earn a strong major role into her 30s, but Lipton, who was 41 when she accepted the job, proved that she could. She played a self-assured legal professional in the role, which was a stark contrast to her Mod Squad days and demonstrated her development as an actress. She was hired for the position that would shape the remainder of her career 2 years later, in 1990. She was cast by David Lynch as Twin Peaks' Norma Jennings. Given Lynch's reputation for collaborating with fresh talent, Lipton's casting was surprising. Norma was the amiable proprietor of the Double R Diner, which was well known for its cherry pie and coffee. Her romance with Everett McGill's character, Big Ed Hurley, was adored by viewers and went on to become one of the most iconic love tales on television. And more than her previous celebrity ever did, the portrayal reflected Lipton's true self. Additionally, during the 2 seasons of the show, 1990-1991, critics gave her performance high marks. For a lot of spectators, Norma Jennings permanently took the position of Julie Barnes from the Mod Squad. She remained faithful to the Twin Peaks universe in 1992 by making an appearance in Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, directed by David Lynch. The film, which debuted to rave reviews at the Cannes Film Festival, was darker than the series. It was a dangerous move for her because it didn't do well at the box office either. She was still proud of her contribution, though. Lipton demonstrated her ability to adjust to shifting television trends outside of Twin Peaks. She had recurrent parts in shows including Popular and Crash in the late 1990s and early 2000s. She portrayed Kelly Foster in Popular, entering a contemporary adolescent drama that was completely different from her bohemian persona from the 1960s. She co-starred with her daughter Rashida Jones and Angie Tribeca in 2017. Her portrayal of Rashida's character's mother, Peggy Tribeca, brought their bond from real life to the film. With the Twin Peaks rebirth and this family partnership, that year turned into a turning point for her. Born on February 25, 1976, Rashida rose to fame as an actress in the workplace, parks, recreation, and social media. Her documentary about her father, Quincy Jones, even earned her a Grammy. Hideta, Lipton's other daughter, had established a successful career in the entertainment sector as well. In addition to her well-known television performances, Peggy Lipton left behind a familial legacy by the time of her death that kept her linked to the limelight. Breathing Out, Peggy Lipton's book, was published in 2005 and was 310 pages long. It was co-written with David and Coco Dalton, and it dispelled the glitzy, kind persona that people believed they were familiar with. She talked candidly about her experiences with sexual assault, adultery, and an abortion in it, as well as her interactions with Paul McCartney and Elvis Presley. She talked about the agony of dealing with racist criticism when married to Quincy Jones in the 1970s. Even her own mother found the connection difficult to accept, stating that she had hoped Peggy would end up with a magnificent Jewish monarch or a charming white prince. Lipton also said that she was too self-conscious to fully appreciate her greatest triumph on the Mod Squad. Because of its candor, the book became a bestseller and gave readers a completely new perspective on Hollywood in the 1960s and 1970s. Peggy was diagnosed with colon cancer in 2004 when she was 58 years old. She had recently finished a successful theater run in the vaginal monologues when she received the diagnosis. Although she may have received a diagnosis in 2003, according to medical records, her treatment, which most likely involved radiation, chemotherapy, and surgery, continued into the next year. In her memoir, she referred to her victory over the illness as her most recent victory. Rashida, her daughter, claimed that the event strengthened the bonds within the family. Her early recovery demonstrated the tenacity that characterized her life, even though it would take another 15 years for the disease to recur. Peggy Jones and Quincy Jones remained close even after their 1989 divorce. Before formally terminating their 15-year marriage, they had been apart for 3 years. However, they protected Hidayah and Rashida, their daughters, from the worst aspects. As though their marriage had never ended, they collaborated on family issues and co-parented with an uncommon affection. Rashida told Entertainment Weekly in 2018 that their intimacy, which stemmed from love, made everything simpler. Quincy even co-starred with Peggy in the documentary Quincy on Rashida's Netflix. He referred to their love as eternal when she passed away. At the age of 72, Peggy passed away at home on May 11, 2019, flanked by her nieces Rashida and Kadada. Her daughters referred to her as their beacon of light and stated she went away quietly. She had previously defeated colon cancer, but it had returned and spread. When word of her passing spread throughout Hollywood, friends and co-stars who had known her for 5 decades paid their respects. For many, her death signaled the end of a chapter in the history of Hollywood in the 1960s and 1970s, as well as the loss of a beloved actress.